laudable, worthy of commendable, worthy of praise, commendable. Again, laudable.
Thank you so much, Trudy. And the reason why we have the word of the day is most of us as adults, we peak when it comes to the words we typically use. We have our small set of vocabulary, we use it over and over again, don't really introduce new words. In a meeting, we introduce the word of the day so that we can just learn something different. It could be a word that you typically don't use or learn a new way of using it. What we're going to encourage is that everybody who speaks today, try to use the word of the day as often as you can. And when the individual or individuals use the word of the day, we're going to snap or clap, something, just to acknowledge that they use the word of the day. Sound good? Awesome. Now, our first speaker, I'm really excited about this one. I haven't heard Anthony speak in a little bit, so it'll be fun for me personally. Anthony is going to be giving a speech that will be evaluated by Trudy. Without further ado, let's welcome Anthony. Let's give Anthony a hand.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me without the mic? Yes, that's what it's about. Yes, very good. So the title of my speech is called Impacting Your Community with Toastmasters. And there's a number of things I can say and a lot of stuff you can get into. But first, I want to read my notes because I have a few things I want to share with you specifically. So the fear of public speaking is the most common phobia ahead of death, spiders, or even heights. The National Institute of Mental Health reports that public speaking anxiety, or glossophobia, affects about 73% of the population. So I ask you all, where do you stand? Are you a part of the 73 or the 27? Who here has some sort of glossophobia? It's okay, raise your hand. Right. Some Toastmasters do. Some very experienced Toastmasters have glossophobia, right? Speaking into an audience makes us nervous because we're vulnerable to rejection, especially that awkward silence where you don't necessarily know what to say. You're kind of just like this, right? You can be subject to rejection or judgment, which is even worse, right? So what that leads me to is my favorite quote that I've developed through being in Toastmasters. I think it's an original. Everyone is able to speak because they can, until it's time to speak, and then no one can. Right? What am I saying? Everyone can talk, but when it's time to stand up and do this, or talk in front of strangers, no, I don't want to. They kind of shy away. The pastor can, of course. And he has to do a whole bunch of prayer to get ready, because I'm sure it's hard for him too. So there's a number of solutions you can take to confronting this factor, or this glossophobia, but I'm here to talk about Toastmasters. There's no ways around it. I've been a Toastmaster for 5.5 years. It feels like 10. But that's because if you put your time, money, and energy into it, you'll get a return. And so, because of Toastmasters, I can now try to do this with some sort of confidence. I can talk to strangers. I can do a whole bunch of stuff. But there are a number of there's a number of aspects to Toastmasters that allow you guys, specifically you all, to impact your community. Number one is on a personal basis, because I found out about Toastmasters through my local church, similar to how you all are finding out about Toastmasters. And I knew that there was something inside of me when I saw the announcement that made me want to say, this is a good investment. Nobody told me. No one said do this. My brother-in-law had mentioned Toastmasters, but he didn't tell me about this opportunity. So when I saw this opportunity, I thought to myself, maybe I should do something. Maybe there's some kind of gumption, or maybe there's some kind of voice telling me to join Toastmasters. And I did. I followed that gumption. And I've been a Toastmaster ever since. And the stuff I've gotten from Toastmasters has really played an important part in my life. Now, I don't know about you all, but my mom is a party animal. And when she turned 60, she made all of her kids, all 4 of us, do a speech praising her. Now, it's not necessarily that we couldn't do it, but because of Toastmasters, I was able to put something together confidently and get some laughs and really talk about my mom in the way that I wanted to and have the impact that I wanted to. And so that's what Toastmasters can do for you. It's not that you can't say something, but you didn't say it how you wanted, or somebody misinterpreted what you said. Those are the worst kind of mistakes that can happen when you're talking to somebody. And even more importantly, I had the chance to give a speech, the best man speech, at my best friend's wedding. Now, mind you, I had just started a new job, and it was all the way in California. So across the flight, I was preparing a speech on my phone, which was on airplane mode. And so I developed that over the 3.5 hours that it took to fly from DC to Houston and Houston to California. But when I gave that speech, everybody was like, "That's amazing." They didn't know that I planned it over the air. And it was really effective. So that's one thing you can do with Toastmasters, really impact you on a personal basis. The second one is, of course, through the church community. And I say that because I can attest to a number of people in our club, or my club at least, that have been a part of the Toastmasters, that we've encouraged and empowered to devote their time, money, and energy. And now they're in a place to where they're giving speeches without us pushing them to do it. They want to give speeches. They're even able to impact their church community through holding Bible study, through small group talks. We even have some people who actually delivered a sermon. Not at our church per se, but at their local churches, because we have people that don't necessarily attend our church, but still are part of our Toastmasters club. So that's what you can do with Toastmasters. And the final thing is definitely impacting your external community, which is the mission of a lot of churches, majority of churches. On average, we get about 4 to 5 different people that come to our meetings every month. And so those are 4 to 5 people times 12. It's close to 30 to 40 people that never heard about Toastmasters, have never heard of our church before. And so those are 30 people on a yearly basis that we get to share our church information with. We get a chance to show them what our church is about, what's the stuff that they can do at our church to help benefit them. And we have 30 or 40 new people that can spread the word about what we do at our church and get more people in. So you can really impact your external community as well. Now, I do have some handouts because I wanted to share some data with you about Toastmasters in case you didn't already have it. Now, I don't have enough for everyone to have one, so please take it and just pass it around. I should give it one. You probably don't need one. Just the Toastmasters International fact sheet about what we have going on. Let's keep going back and see you guys. So as you'll read, you'll see that there are a number of tangible and plausible impacts that Toastmasters can do for you, but only if you put in the time and energy and, of course, the financial resources into doing so. And I can attest to all three. And so in closing, I want to ask you all, once again, are you a part of the 73 or the other 27%? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that speech. Whenever Anthony speaks, it's always a bit of a proud moment for me. I remember when Anthony came into Toastmasters for the first time, somewhat 5 years ago, as he mentioned. And Anthony is someone who naturally speaks well, but I think the thing he needed to figure out was his own style, whatever that is for. And some of us, honestly, that's the thing that trips us up. We hear so many people speaking and we try to mimic them that we lose our own unique style. And the problem with mimicking someone is you're never going to outdo that person because that's their natural style. And so one of the things that Toastmasters will do for you if you do decide to join this experience is it teaches you your own style. The more you speak, the more you'll find out, am I naturally funny? Do I connect with an audience with personal stories? What do I do naturally really, really well? So thank you, Anthony, for sharing that speech with us. We'll have an evaluation of Anthony's speech towards the end. Now we're going to have my absolute favorite part of a typical meeting, which is where Robert is going to regale us with some interesting questions. So let's welcome Robert. Let's give Robert a hand.
Good afternoon one more time. I remember the hands that were raised for all of our shy speakers. So table topics, let me tell you what happens. Anybody ever watch any game shows? Family Feud, Jeopardy, and you've always got the right answer, and the person that's giving the answer always gives the wrong answer, right? Well, with table topics, you get a question, and you can give an answer. But the cool part about it is that there is no wrong answer. The only thing that we ask you to do is speak on whatever that subject topic is for at least 1 to 2 minutes, right? And if somebody is just minding their business and doing the wrong thing, we can tell them for 15 minutes what they should be doing, right? So during this table topics, you've got 1 to 2 minutes to speak on the question that I'm going to ask you. So, can I have one volunteer who wants to come up, get this thing over with, because Rob will choose you, even if you don't make eye contact. Just one brave soul who'd like to come and stand before this wonderful desk, model what it's supposed to be, going once, going twice. You sang so well. Why don't you come on up and just answer this question for us? Let's give her a hand. Hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
Lydia.
Lydia, I'm Robert.
Nice
Great
to meet you.
All right.
All right.
So here's how this is going to work. I have questions that you don't know what I have, Lydia. They're numbered from 1 to 10. Whichever number you choose is going to be the question that I'm going to ask you.
Shoot, Robert.
Shoot, Robert, you got to give me a number first.
Oh,
1 through 10. Any number.
7.
7. Wow. Number 7. When was the last time you should have spoken up about something, but you didn't? Question is, when was the last time that you should have spoken up about something, but you didn't? Lydia.
You guys hear me without mic?
No.
Of course not. The last time I should have spoken up on something and I didn't. Yeah. I think I always speak up on something. Can I change another one? It may have been, I probably would have to go back to my younger years because I always speak up, I think I know. We were all 7 kids, myself included. And when my mom would leave out, she would say, do not light the stove, do not what have you, do not what have you. And this day she went out and she said, do not light the stove or what have you. And my sister lighted the stove and the whatever she had on the fire caught fire, and she took the stuff and she threw it in the cupboard and they closed the door and the cupboard started catching on fire, and then my mom came back and the kitchen was burning and she was like, who did this? And me knowing who did it didn't say, and because she wouldn't beat the entire flock of us, she just cried. But it would have been one of the times I probably should have said it was Luan. She caught the kitchen on fire. That would be one. Now in my adult, I probably speak too much.
Awesome job, Lydia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I finished?
You're finished.
Thank you.
Did everybody see how easy that was? There is no wrong answer. There is no, and that was a great answer. So, can I have one other willing participant before my prying eyes pick someone? Young man, just walking in? Are you a part of the Toastmasters meeting? Are you a part of this meeting? Kind of? Just come up real quick. Real quick. Let's give you a hand. Now, you don't know anything about what's about to happen, do you? That is the beauty of this. So I want you to help me. I'm standing right here with you on this stage. Sure. Right? So what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a question. You can pick any one of the questions that I've pre-selected from 1 through 10. You can pick any number except for 7. I'm going to ask you that question, and then I'd like for you to give an answer to the group. But I need you to speak for 1 to 2 minutes about it. Can you handle that?
Anything not number 7?
Anything not number 7. Any number from 1 to 10, just not number 7.
All right.
Pick a number.
Oh, right now? All right.
Right now.
4.
Number 4. Good one.
We'll talk later.
Public. All right. Public speaking is one of the top fears in the world. Name one fear that you've already conquered or one fear that you would like to conquer. Public speaking is one of the top fears in the world. Name one fear that you've already conquered or one fear that you would like to conquer. Give him a hand. You got it. You got it. I'm standing on the stage.
One
One
two.
fear
1 to 2 minutes.
1 to 2 minutes.
One.
You give us a full 60 seconds. Good.
Let's go, bro. So my name is Jeremy, friend of Wiley, set me up. You're sweating, so you must have went first. So a fear that I have is being broke. I grew up in a home where money wasn't really readily available, but it didn't seem like it. We had help through family. But ever since then and growing up, I made sure that we had money as far as my personal family, my wife and my son. So even when I was working and I had my parents still there, I made sure that I was saving my money because, again, we didn't really have too much. So I want to make sure whatever I got, I was going to save it. And so I took that practice forward to how I raise my family now. And I'm trying to place those values upon my son too. Not necessarily because now we're okay, but the value of having money was really important to me as a young boy. So I think that's my at least 1 minute.
Does everybody see how easy that is? Being set up by your friend is such a great thing, right? Awesome job. So, this is the last time I'm going to ask for a willing participant. I'm just going to say, you get a speech, and you get a speech, and you get a speech. Any willing participants?
She's willing. No, I'm not. Of course you are.
This is the one who can never hear when you say, can you hear us now?
Let me see if I can hear you. Go ahead.
You know what? You are fanning as if you are nervous.
Yes.
And I'd like you to come on up one more time. Let's give him a hand. You've been here long enough to know the rules, so pick any number.
5.
Number 5. Good one. If you saw a little kid stealing candy from the grocery store, what scripture would you share, or what would you do? If you saw a little kid stealing candy from the grocery store, what scripture would you share, or what would you do?
You want the Bible?
All right. So, well, let's just say that it's laudable that you're part of the 27%. The 27% that is comfortable speaking up here. I'm a part of the 73. And so if I saw a kid who was stealing from a candy store, a grocery store, I would quote the verse that says, "My God will supply all your needs according to the riches in Christ Jesus." Now, I would teach them more than that, there's no need to steal, but you have not because you ask not. And so therefore, instead of just stealing, he should go and ask, whether it's somebody else in the store or whether it's maybe the store owner or the cashier, to see what he can actually get if he just simply asks. Because, the Bible says that if all things, asking in belief, that God will provide for you if you believe. So I just believe that, he should take those principles and use those scriptures instead of stealing the next time. Whoop, whoop.
Does everybody see how easy this is? I tell you. I know I've said this before, and I'll say it one more time. Is there a willing participant who wants to stand behind this wonderful desk to practice their speaking skills? Going once, going twice. I didn't know you volunteered. I saw you raise your hand. Why are you volunteering? This is such an easy exercise. Let's give her a hand. See, I'm standing right here with you.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'll tell you guys to do whenever you're in a public speaking situation and your nerves are really bad, the best thing that you can do, one tip, is to pull somebody into space with you. So while you're speaking, you just find a stranger, a total stranger, shake his or her hand, and I promise you, if you reach your hand out, they'll reach it back. And they kind of feel like they're right there on the stage with you. So whenever you get nervous, forget about all those people out there and look right at this person right here, because you pulled them into your space, right? So that's one secret tip that we can take with us for life, all right? So you know the drill. 1 through 10. Pick a number, any number.
Number 2.
Number 2, all right. I think you'll like this one. If you could catch a plane right now to any destination in the world, where would it be and why? If you could catch a plane right now to any destination in the world, where would you go and why? Let's give her a hand.
First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Sister Landy. And if I had a chance to catch a plane right now, I would go to Paris. Can I name 3 places? Paris. Then I'd go to Venice. Paris for shopping. Venice because my mother always wanted to go. And Italy because I want to buy a Lover pocketbook.
Keep going.
Okay. And the reason is that it's been a long time since my family has traveled together, and my mother just turned 80 years old. So we were talking, we celebrated her birthday on the 15th of March, and we were talking about where we want to go, and that's what we talked about, going to those 3 places. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's great speaking to you.
All right, this is the last one for the night, and this is going to be a good one. I'm going to pick the number myself. Is there a willing, I've said this a million times, participant who wants to come? 1, 2, 3, 4. The lady in the red dress, thank you so much for volunteering. I appreciate that so very much. I'm so glad that you came. I'm so very, what's your name?
Janet.
Janet, I'm Robert. So great to meet you. I'm so glad you volunteered. You had the last question. This question is going to be a good one, I promise you, okay?
Okay.
All right. You have to share your answer with all of us. I would never want to spend 1 day in jail for anything that I've done wrong. But would you spend 1 week in jail for your daughter? Why or why not? I would never want to spend 1 day in jail for anything that I've done wrong. But would you spend 1 week in jail for, well, actually it says a loved one, but I'm assuming that's your daughter. So I'll leave it with a loved one. Would you spend a week in jail for a loved one? A week in jail? Why or why not? You have the floor. Let's get right on.
Okay, I'm Sister Janet. And no. I will not spend a day, a minute in jail for no loved one. If they get themselves there, they're gonna stay there. So years ago, my son decided he wanna make trouble. So I called the police to lock him up. So he went to jail by himself. And I didn't go over there to look for him either. That's his way of doing what he does. So his brothers went, but I didn't go. Because he got himself into trouble. He didn't listen. So if you get yourself into trouble, you're gonna, it's your own consequences. I'm not going. Yeah. But then he came back out and thanked me for what I did because I saved his life and I saved other people in the community from what the situation was.
Amen. Well, everyone, I'm sure that you're glad that you didn't get a chance to come and share your testimony and your story. Let's give a hand for all the laudable answers that we heard today. I turn it over to the contest chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Weren't those exciting questions?
Yes.
I want to say, as a group, you did really, really good. I've seen groups that get really nervous. People freak out. They talk for a few seconds. They run out. So thank you so much for indulging us with those questions. Now we're going to move into the evaluation portion of the meeting. I had mentioned earlier that typically in Toastmasters, you get feedback after you give a speech. If you think about the work situation and most places where we interact, when you give a speech or you do something, you typically get feedback maybe weeks later, months later, if at all. But the beauty of Toastmasters is you get feedback right away to see how did you do, what can you do better, and that's exactly what Trudy's going to do for Anthony. So without further ado, let's welcome Trudy. Let's give her a hand.
Good evening again, everyone.
Sana mentioned, I'm here to evaluate Anthony's speech. Anthony, thank you for your speech. There is something about when you're opening a speech, there's a 10-second rule. And that is that you have 10 seconds when you start your speech to grab your audience's attention. And Anthony, you did just that. You came here to learn something about Toastmasters. So Anthony's title was I thought I wrote it down, but we're here to learn how Toastmasters can impact the community. That, I'm sure, grabbed your attention because you did come here to find out about Toastmasters and one other way to find out how it will impact you as a potential Toastmaster. So thank you for that. You did a perfect job in grabbing us within that 10 seconds. I noticed that you did have eye contact, Anthony. However, you stayed within this particular area. You talked to us. I did see you look at me. I think if you moved out a little more, this young lady over here in the red would have been, you would have grabbed her eye and kept her attention. And here as well. And also over here, there's a speaking area. And there is another rule about the speaking area, and that is that this is your narrative point. When you start here, you start here to give your title and to give information. When you mentioned that you had a chance to, you moved to your right, I had a chance to. So you're beginning your story, a little bit of a story. So you move over there, and when you come back to give the rest of your narrative, you can come back here. We have a whole speaking area. They didn't tell you where it was, but it's generally over here. Of course, you don't want to go too far, don't step on your toes there. And over here, and like I said, close enough where you're not stepping on a person's toe or not, and that you're not in their face. You basically stayed here. You didn't move about too much. Great bit of information. Use the speaking area. Even though you were giving information, it's always good to touch base with everyone. Give a little personal touch to this person, this person, and over here as well. If I would, or if I could, offer one bit of suggestion, that would be, you had a pen in your hand. You held that pen right up until the end. It was a little bit distracting to me. But I still heard what you had to say, but I was wondering why you was holding onto that pen. Maybe it was some sort of comfort or whatever. But when you're speaking, it's always good to not have any additional distractions, right? Robert mentioned to touch base with the first person on this row by shaking hands or whatever to pull them in. And I think once you've done that, that pen no longer, you don't have to any longer use it as a crutch. Bottom line, in conclusion, great speech, great bit of information. Did you guys get some information from him? Yes. Wonderful. Great bit of information. Good. I'll talk about that later. It was the hand movement when we're talking, and I do this as well, so I have to be more mindful of my hand movement because that's also a distraction. But your gestures were pretty good. Your eye contact was good. Just a little more. Give everybody a little play. Otherwise, vocal variety was great. Good speech. And I got some information too, even though I'm a Toastmasters.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Trudy. One of the things you'll notice about the evaluation is that in itself it's a mini speech, and we also give feedback to the evaluators, but I'm going to do that once we get the timer's report. And the reason is simple. The art of giving the evaluation is a speech, and so that person also gets feedback. So I'm going to have some feedback from Trudy in a second. But first, let's hear the timer's report. I want to see how we did on the time. So Trudy, how did we do on time? Let's give Trudy a hand as she gives us that readout.
Our time?
The speech, and I did time the speech. It was 6:37.
6:37 for Anthony's speech. In our table topics, our first speaker was Lydia. Yes. Lydia,
You did an excellent job of 1 minute and 26 seconds.
Good job.
Jeremy had a time of 1 minute and 11 seconds. Great job. Great job. Wally? Your minutes were, you're the pastor, right?
Uh-oh.
So, 1 minute and 10 seconds. Awesome. Sister Landy, 1 minute, you made it. And Jeanette.
Janet?
It is Jeanette, right?
Janet.
Janet.
Yeah.
Oh, Janet. Your accent is so, yeah, beautiful though. Janet. 1 minute and 5 seconds. You did an awesome job.
Thank you so much, Trudy, for giving us the timers report. Today, I didn't really want us to have the counter grammarian because I feel that sometimes it trips people up. But essentially, in a typical meeting, we would have someone count filler words. I did note the filler words that were commonly used, and I'll share without pointing at anybody. Was absolutely the most common filler word for this group. A lot of ahs, a few so's here or there, but the overwhelming, Trudy pointed herself out. I wasn't going to say it, but she was the soar of the group. Our prepared speaker, though, pretty clean, Anthony. You had only one filler word, which is usually the hard one because he had a much longer run of time speaking. So thank you so much for sharing that. One tip I'll give everybody is that one way to avoid filler words is just to pause. A lot of times the reason why we have those filler words is because we're talking too quickly, our brains are going too fast, but if you talk a little slower and pause, more likely than not, you eliminate the filler words. So something for us to think about for next time. Now, the meeting, the demo is officially over, but I do want to take questions and also use this opportunity for each person who's part of the team to share their testimonial, their Toastmasters testimonial. So I'm going to start off with Shola, who's writing feverishly at the back something. So let's give Shola a hand. No, come up front. Let's make it a true public speaking moment. Oh, yes. Thank you, Shola.
Since my friend put me on the spot, I'll tell you another aspect of Toastmasters that you guys might not have gotten a chance to see. So what I was doing was writing out an evaluation for Anthony's speech. And writing out some key things that he did well and how he impacted the audience and what he can work on. So that's what I was doing. And when you join the Toastmasters meeting, you'll get, well, it's going online now. There's a new path that we call Pathways, but there's an opportunity to print out an evaluation sheet. And when you give a presentation, whoever your evaluator is, like Trudy just did, has the opportunity to write down some few notes. And that's what I was doing in the back. I really enjoyed the meeting. I like the fact that you guys just dove right in there. You were not afraid of table topics. That was pretty well done. And most of you did very, very well. I can't really sense that some of you have phobias, even though you raised your hands. So, but once again, thanks for giving us the opportunity, and I really enjoyed the meeting, and thanks for welcoming us. Oh, testimony, yes. Toastmaster story. So when I was younger, I'm Nigerian, and when I left the state, born in DC, but when I went to Nigeria, when I was in high school, I was on a debate team. And like most people, like Anthony made a good point, a lot of us can't speak until we are asked to speak. So I was on a debate team in my high school. And when I practiced, I always knew what to say. I thought my material was good. But I was very nervous in front of the audience. And when I did deliver my responses during the debate, it was shaky and not well delivered. And I always found myself coming second place. And when I look at the content of my competitors, it wasn't that it was much better, but they were very confident. Body language was good. And they were looking at the audience like I'm doing now. So they had such confidence in their delivery, whereas I was lacking confidence. And that made the difference between first and second place. And this carried on onto college. So I realized that ultimately one day I would like to lead an organization and be founder of an organization, and I have to be able to learn how to communicate effectively and to get buy-in from people. So I came to terms with the fact, and I joined a Toastmasters group. And as you can see, I'm still working on it, but I'm much better than I used to be. So I encourage you, if you have any shortcomings as far as delivering your speeches or communicating effectively, that you join Toastmasters, and it will definitely help you a much. All right.
Thank you so much, Shola, for sharing. I'm going to switch it up and ask Robert, actually, to share his Toastmaster story. Robert is one of the anomalies. He's just really enjoying public speaking. The thing I want Robert to share with us is about 6-7 months ago or so, Robert competed in the speech contest, which is a huge deal because you have about 6,000 Toastmasters aggregated in clubs. The clubs have their contest. They move on to the area, then the division, then the district. And he won the district contest out of the 6,000 some odd members. So I want Robert to share with us his Toastmasters story or journey. Let's give Robert a hand.
Good evening once again. I'm sure if I told you all that I was very nervous as a child, I rarely spoke. Hardly ever. I grew up in a part of Washington, D.C. where you had to be cool, and nobody smiled, and hardly anybody spoke unless they were spoken to. So I lived by those rules for most of my life and missed out on so many opportunities. In college, I was going to school to be a doctor, but I did the math in my head that after I graduated from college, it was going to be 8 more years and a residency, and I thought that was no bueno. And so I had the epiphany sitting on the steps at Howard University School of C that I no longer wanted to do the medical track. I decided I wanted to be a journalism major. But before I wanted to be a journalism major, I wanted to be a rapper. So I tried my hand at rapping, didn't make it. So I went back into my shell of hardly ever speaking. And as fate would have it, I joined a job where I had to be in retail with athletic tennis shoes. So I loved the tennis shoes, but I didn't like speaking. And I had to get better at selling and performing, and to do that, I had to learn to speak. So by default, I learned how to speak. And the way that I would get better at speaking is that I had a big imagination as a child. I had to make up games by myself. I was never bored because I was always talking to myself, and I had a friend who wasn't there. People thought I was strange, but it was normal to me. So when I would be on the sales floor selling, what I would do is any accent that I ever heard, I would do a British accent. I would do an African accent. I would do a Spanish accent. And I would just go to a faraway place, and the customer was like, but they bought whatever I was selling. And I saw how effective that could be, and I continued doing that. So from that, I just haven't stopped talking. Right now, Ina's gonna have to pull me off the stage. But my Toastmaster story is that I was looking for a club. I actually called Trudy and I said, I'm interested in joining a club. She said, well, we have a great club, and I want to come through and see your club. And she says, well, how will I be able to recognize you? I said, well, I'll be the handsome light-skinned guy coming into your club on a Thursday night. So when I came in, I was just waiting for her to say, you're the handsome one, but she never said anything. She went through the whole meeting. I said, Trudy, I'm the handsome light-skinned guy. So she looked again and she said, oh, okay. But anyway, I've been with Toastmasters, and it's been a great experience. I'm the president of our particular club. Whenever we start a meeting, I always say, look to the left and look to your right, and tell that person that you're looking at, I'm so glad that you came. So can you look to your left and to your right and just tell that person, I'm so glad you came. And the one thing that I will share with you through Toastmasters, every person that you come in contact with, it's not an accident. Be intentional in meeting whomever you see, especially in this holy place, and even when you get an opportunity, because the person that you speak to, they may have the answer to a question that you have. The person that you speak to may have a solution to a problem that you're working on. So you never knew who God will send in your path to meet with you, right? If I stand here long enough, I'll start preaching, but I tell you this, one thing I know for sure, the Toastmasters has helped me to demonstrate practice and do something that I love to speak. So there's not a stranger that I've ever met, and there's nobody that I can say that I dislike because I'm always speaking, I'm always talking, and I love it when somebody comes back and says, you know, when you said such and such, man, that impacted me in such a big way. So that is everything for me, that somebody can listen to what I said and they can be impacted by it. So whenever you're in a speaking space, when you guys decide to do Toastmasters here in this place, in this room, whenever you get nervous, just find that person on the front row and pull them into your speaking space. I promise you that they will connect with you. Amen? That's it.
Thank you so much, Robert. I told you he was good. And I'm going to have Anthony share I know Anthony shared a little bit about his story, but Anthony, is there anything else you want to add on per your Toastmaster story? Let's give Anthony a hand. That was the leading question.
So you guys know my. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. No. Exactly. And so, but that's the thing, right? You really, when you're talking to people and really trying to develop your style, it's okay to put a humor in if you like to laugh a lot. I know I do, severally. It's actually a weakness of mine, but it's one of those things where if you're able to talk how you want to talk and deliver how you want to deliver, you can really develop. But on the flip side, I will say that Toastmasters also allows you to be a leader. Toastmasters empowers not only public speaking, but leadership skills. So leading people into encouraging them or showing them how it's done, leading by example, leading by administratively, being involved as a president or a secretary or you name it. You can really get a chance to really develop your leadership skills here. And I'll say that in closing, I'll say that what you really should focus on is three things. And I talked about this during my speeches. Obviously money, but money is the easiest thing, to be honest with you. You can throw 51 or 60, however much it costs to be a member. You can throw that at anything. But you won't be an effective Toastmaster if you're not able to put the time or energy into developing your public speaking skills, because that is where you get better. And it doesn't matter that I'm talking in front of hundreds or dozens of people like yourselves. It's when you're talking to 2 or 3 people, you really have to put the work in, because you can think you're getting better until it's time to speak, and then you don't do it, like I just talked about before. And so you don't want if you do decide to become a Toastmasters Club, which we're sure you will be, we don't want you to have that impact or that adverse impact to where I'm going to give a speech, I'm going to do this, and then you don't do it, because then it'll snowball. But if you're able to put the time, money, and energy into it, you'll be very successful. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And finally, I want us to hear from Trudy, and then we'll do questions, and I'll share my story, and we'll be done. So Trudy, share with us why you joined Toastmasters and what you've gotten out of it. Let's give Trudy a hand.
Why did I join Toastmasters? Well, I heard about Toastmasters years and years ago, and a girlfriend of mine mentioned it, and I didn't know what it was. I was like, Toastmasters. I thought this is a place where you go to learn how to toast somebody or roast somebody. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll go with you. And I did go. And the meeting was fun, and I wanted to go back. It was at a school in Bowie. However, the school caught fire, and I didn't know where the club went to, and my girlfriend didn't go back with me. So for years, I didn't go back. And then my husband, who had a business at Bowie Beck, mentioned one day they were going to start a Toastmasters club, and that was GoPro Toastmasters. And so, of course, I was like, Toastmasters, oh, I remember going, I want to go back with you. And I did go, and I've been with GoPro Toastmasters ever since. I've held every leadership role in that club that is possible. President, Vice President Education, VP of Membership, VP PR, which is what I am as, right now, the Sergeant at Arms, Secretary, Treasurer. Woo! Yes. they're all wonderful roles, and you get to learn your leadership. You get to experience true leadership in each and every one of those roles. So when you start your Toastmasters Club, by all means, be the first one to be the president or the vice president of education, membership. Make sure you join one of those leadership roles, and it actually helps not only you grow, but it helps your club become a really very powerful club.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank Trudy. So this is not a save the best for last moment, but the truth of the matter is that leadership is, I think, the thing that I got the most out of Toastmasters. I came into this honestly to be a better communicator, but leadership is what I got. It's very easy to lead when you're paying people, when you're their boss at work, because you're the boss. And so you tell them, your career's in my hand, the end. And so for me, for work, for example, the individuals who are residents or interns, I'm their boss. And so whatever I say is what they have to do. It's really just that simple. But in a nonprofit setting like Toastmasters, you learn what true leadership is, where you're not paying people and you have to keep them motivated and keep a group of thousands of people going. And, you know, for better or for worse, we are in a climate where gender and race and age can work against you, and in that case, work against me. And so I had to learn to lead people who are 2-3 times older than I am, individuals who are used to leading in a space where they're the CEOs of their own organizations, but keeping them motivated and keeping them still focused on the goal and not pay them. And that's the leadership experience that Toastmasters has given me that truly nobody can take away from me at this point. And whatever leadership journey I move into, it's gonna be so much easier to motivate people because I've learned how to resolve conflicts and deal with so many personalities and manage everybody's expectations and keep us focused on the vision, etc. So just something to think about. Even though you come in for communication, I think most of us, we stay because of the leadership development opportunity that you get out of Toastmasters. So that's that. I am going to pause and give us a chance to ask any questions. So questions about the meeting, questions about starting the club, any questions that anybody has. I typically also like to get feedback from those who participated, especially if you didn't speak, just to see what you thought about the meeting. So I'm going to start off with the gentleman at the back wearing glasses. He's trying to act confused, but yes, you, sir. What were your thoughts about the meeting? Let's give him a hand. You can talk from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tosin.
Hi, Tosin.
I thought the meeting went well. I think I've been to a couple of Toastmasters meetings. Technically, I'm a part of one, but
Uh-oh.
So I think the meeting went well. I think someone that's been to a lot of them, I think it would have been good for me to go to like a initial session like this to get as much information as possible, instead of just going to one that's been already occurring.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing things, I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm just getting it thrown at you. So.
Right.
Very informative. I think everyone's speeches, the 1 and 2 minute speeches, you guys did well. Because I've been in a lot of sessions and people are kind of nervous in those 1 and 2 minute speeches. So I think all those went well. I think the main speech of the day was well. I think the way the structure and everything went well for the first session. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tosin. The lady in the white and black, what did you think about the meeting? Let's give her a hand.
Well, my name is Esther Jala.
Hi, Esther.
Well, I think the meeting is a very nice one, especially for us who have, you know, we get nervous, you know. It's not that we don't know what to say. We do know what to say. But when you get up there, you look at everybody and you start feeling shy or whatever. So I think it's a good thing. It's a good start. So we can start from somewhere, and from the motivation from all the people who spoke, that could help us to do better. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Esther. Let's give her a hand. And I'll take one more comment. Actually, we're going to take a comment from our audience cheerleader. She can't hear anybody speaking. Now she's going to pretend that she can't hear me speaking. What were your thoughts about the meeting?
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Jimmy Bukari.
Hi.
That was my sister that spoke.
Oh, awesome.
Anyway, I found the meeting really fun.
Good one.
We can't hear you.
He's joking. He's joking.
I found it quite fun. I was, planning to join the Toastmasters at my job. You know, I didn't really have this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really very useful to know how it goes. You know, it's important to let people know what they're walking into, so that when they eventually make a decision, it becomes an informed decision. So I'm very grateful for that. And You all make it sound really easy, so let us hope.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So does anybody have any questions before I turn it over to the pastor? Any questions? Wally and I, we spoke over the phone, I feel like it's a month ago at some point right now. And I did share some of the particulars of what will be needed to get started. So he has that information already. I don't know if you want to share anything else with the group before we close out. So I'm going to turn it over to your pastor. Thank you so much.
Well, once again, we just want to thank the Toastmasters for coming out and presenting for us today. Actually, a few of you look familiar because I've been to your club at least one time, and so I just want to thank you for taking out the time, and I hope that we can start a Toastmasters here so that we can grow in our confidence in public speaking and also be an outreach to the community as well, as my brother was saying right there. So without further ado, are there any questions?
So what do we have to do to join? Yes, to start.
Do you want me to share that later?
Sure.
Okay.
You can share that. It
Or-
depends on you.
Okay.
Okay, so I like that segue. He's like, are you going to share? Am I going to share? Essentially, to get started, we need a minimum of 20 people who are ready to do this. And in terms of the monies and whatnot, Pastor Wiley will share that offline with you. But it's fairly, to be honest with you, we're talking $6 per month. Tops, $6 or $7 per month, which is not a lot in retrospect. That's lunch essentially for one day for most people. So I don't really like to focus too much on the monies. The part that really is the drive is we want to get those 20 people. So if there's anybody who is part of the church, part of the community that you feel would benefit from something like this, we definitely want you to reach out to those individuals, invite them, provide Pastor Wally their contact information, and he'll be collating the numbers of people to see how many we have. And as soon as we get to 20, we'll turn in the paperwork, and essentially that will be that. We'll have the club ready to go. Awesome.
Thank you so much, and this meeting is adjourned. Appreciate it. I used to come in the joggers.